Hello. All right, so with 8b, now we're going to actually write our quadratic equations using in vertex form. English is really hard. So just to kind of start off, we're going to kind of refer back to what we did in 8a, and we're going to find the axis of symmetry and the vertex using those specific formulas. So to start off, you have to find your a, b, and c values. So given here, we have an a value of 1, a b value of -6, and a c value of 15. So I'm going to use this information. Go up there. All right, now I want to find my AOS. So to find the AOS, you want to use the formula x equals the opposite of b all over 2a. All right, so I'm going to use the a, b, c values that I just found. So to find my AOS, I want the opposite of my b value, so the opposite of -6 all over 2 times my a value. All right, so the opposite of a negative is going to give you a +6. That's going to be over 2. And when you simplify, you get 3. So we know our AOS here is going to be x equals 3. All right, so now I want to be able to find the vertex. So now I want to plug that in to my original equation. All right, so I'm plugging in that value. So I just got 3, so I'm going to plug in 3 to my original equation. So I want 3 squared minus 6 times 3 plus 15. All right, so when I plug it in, so whenever you do plug things in, just make sure that you are going to use, lost my train of thought. Make sure you use your parentheses. There we go. Hello. All right, I'm having calculator problems. I'm just having problems. All right, so there we go. So when I plug that in, you should get, hello, there we go. You should get 6. All right. So I know my AOS is going to be x equals 3, and then my vertex is going to be an x value of 3 with a y value of 6. So remember, once you plug it in, the AOS is your x value of the vertex, and then what you find is going to be the y value of that vertex. All right, so this is the general structure of how I would recommend you solve these problems, but as long as you have your organization and setup, you're good to use whatever setup you have. All right, so same idea on this one. So I would say pause here, try this one on your own, and see what you get. Or if not, we'll just keep going. All right, so starting off, you have an A value of -2, B value of -12, and a C value of -18. All right, so yeet, throw it up there. All right, so once again, start by finding your AOS using the formula x equals opposite of b over 2a. So the opposite of b, so I'm going to have a negative of -12 all over 2 times -2. So when I simplify, I'm going to have a positive 12 over -4, which is going to simplify to -3. All right, so now I know my AOS here is going to be x equals -3. Now I need to find the vertex. So I found the x value of the vertex. Now I need to find the y value. All right, so I'm going to plug in that -3 that I just found. So I know I have -2 parentheses, -3 squared, minus 12 parentheses times -3, minus 18. Nope. All right, so once again, you can do it by hand or you can use the calculator. It literally does not matter. If you're someone who has like anxiety of getting everything wrong, no matter what math you're doing, I would just say use a calculator. So when you plug it in, you get 0. All right, so we get a y value of 0, which means our vertex is going to be -3 parentheses 0. So we have an AOS value, -3. The vertex of -3, that is terrible, of -3, 0. All right. All right, so just to kind of recap from last time, standard form is f of x or y, whichever one, ax squared plus bx plus c. And now we're actually going to convert to what we call vertex form. So vertex form, as you briefly saw over here, is y equals a parentheses x minus h squared plus k. Now your h and k here represent the x and y values of the vertex respectively. So your h value is actually the x value of your vertex, and then the k value is the y value. Now, we have to use those different letters because we were using a different form. So just keep in mind, h comma k actually represents your vertex of your parabola. All right. So we're going from standard form to vertex form. So there's a few steps that we're going to follow. So we have the skeletal structure problem here. That way, if you ever get confused at what step or a specific step or what to do after a certain step or whatever, you can always come back to these steps and you can just kind of follow the train of thought. All right, so we're going to start up here with step 1. Step 1 is identifying your ABC values. All right, so I'm going to zoom out a bit here. So we have an A value of 1, B value of 2, and a C value, that's terrible, that's still terrible, of -3. So a lot of solving these problems was actually already done in 8A. So we're just kind of building on what we already did. So we're still going to start by finding the AOS and finding the vertex. So we're building on top of what we've already done. All right, so I want to start with the opposite of B over 2A. So the opposite of B is going to give you -2 over 2 times my A value of 1. So I'm going to have -2 over a +2, which is going to simplify to a -1. Now, remember, this is the AOS, and it shows you the x value of the vertex, which connects and tells you this is your h value. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to find the y value of the vertex. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take that x value that I just found, and I want to plug it in. So I'm going to plug in that -1 that I just found. So remember, plugging it into your original equation up here. All right, so we have -1 squared plus 2 times -1 minus 3. So we want to find what that k value is going to be, which is what we get here. So this is going to be 1 minus 2 minus 3, which is going to give you a -4. All right, so now we want to find the a, h, and k values. All right, well, so what we just found up here, this is actually your k value. All right, so your a value is going to just come from your original a value. So you can literally just yeet. So this is what we're just kind of bringing down. So we have an a value of 1. All right, and then your h value, which is our AOS right here, which is -1. And then we're looking for the k value, which is what we found here in step 3, which is -4. All right, so now we're just going to kind of throw it all together, and we want to put it in vertex form and then simplify it if necessary. All right, so I'm starting. So I'm going to kind of write it up here so you can kind of see where everything's going. All right, so Hello, there we go. You're only going to plug in for A, H, and K. Everything else is going to stay the exact same. All right, so I'm going to plug in a 1 value for my A value, then X minus my H value, which is -1, squared, plus my K value, which is -4. So we don't want to just leave it like this hot mess that we see before us. We want to start cleaning it up. So the part that we're cleaning up is right here. So minus a negative turns into plus a positive. And then over here, when we add a negative, that just turns into subtraction. All right, so here you're going to have y equals, parentheses, x plus 1, all squared, minus 4. And then in the front here, we don't have to write that 1. It doesn't change anything, so you can just leave it off. If it was any other value, you would leave it there, though. So this is your vertex form. This is your final answer. All right, so really we're doing the same thing that we've already done. We're just kind of writing it in a different way. All right, so the chunk of the problems are steps 1 through 3. So after that, it's just writing it in the form. All right, so now we're going to do some practice problems. All right, so here we have y equals x squared minus 10x plus 29. All right, so we're going to start with our ABC values. So a value of 1, b value of -10, and a c value of 29. All right, yeet. So start with your AOS. So once again, this is going to be x equals the opposite of b over 2a. So when I start actually finding it, we want negative of -10 over 2 times 1. So when I take the opposite of a negative, that's going to turn into a positive. So then in the bottom, we have 2 times 1, which just gives you 2. And then simplify, we have an AOS of 5. No. All right, so 5 is our AOS. All right, so remember, this right here is your H value. So now we need to find the K value, which is your vertex. So just like before, now I want to plug in that value that we just found. So I'm going to plug in 5. Now I'm plugging it in to my original equation up there. So I'm going to have 5 squared minus 10 times 5 plus 29. And you're going to plug in that 5 and all those x values. So once again, if you want to just kind of, what's the word? Use a calculator, go for it, you can. Or if you want to do it by hand, go for it. But just for the sake of practicing using your calculator, I would say practice using your calculator. Get used to its functionality, get used to its operations. So when you plug it in, you get 4. Hello, there we go. All right. So E equals 4, which means your vertex value here is going to be 5, 4. All right, so this value here is your K value, that 4 is. So now we want to use our A, H, and K values, and we want to write it in vertex form. All right, so I'm going to just start with just the general vertex form. So A parentheses x minus h all squared, hello, plus k. So remember, we're only going to plug in for your A, H, and K, nothing else. So when you plug in, we have an A value of 1 and an H value of 5. So I want x minus 5 all squared. Then we have a K value of 4. So plus 4. So the only thing that we can really simplify or kind of fix is just getting rid of that 1 in the very front. We don't need it. So we're just looking at x minus 5 all squared plus 4. All right, so these questions down here is you want to find the vertex and you want to identify a vertex form. So we just did vertex form. So actually, no. No. There we go. So there's your vertex form equation that we just found. And now we actually want to take the vertex. So we know the vertex is 5, 4, but if you ever want to take the vertex out of the equation, just know this is your x value, this is your y value. And we want to take the opposite of the h value. So even though it's negative out here in the front, we know it's still a positive 5. However, if it was a positive 5, like if it was x plus 5 all squared, then it would be a negative 5. We're taking the opposite. All right. So our vertex here is just going to be 5, 4. So this is what your practice problems are really going to look like here. All right. So this is a good idea of what work you should be showing. All right. Let's look at the next one. All right. So once again, start with your ABCs. So A is 5. That's not a B. B is 10. And your C value is -3. Yee. All right. So once again, start by finding your AOS. So to find that, we're using the opposite of B over 2A. So I'm actually going to pause right here. One thing I do recommend doing is actually writing out the formula every time. Because I will say, the more you actually write the formula, the more likely you are to remember it and actually have it memorized. So I would highly recommend writing out the formula every time you use it, just to kind of solidify what you're learning. All right, so here, you want the opposite of B. So I want the opposite of 10 over 2 times my A value. All right, so we're going to have -10 over 10, which is going to simplify to -1. So remember, this is your H value. Now I want to find the vertex. All right, so I'm going to plug in the value that I literally just got. So I'm going to plug in -1 to my original equation. And move this down a bit. All right, so I'm using the original equation, 5 parentheses, -1 squared, plus 10 times, nope, -1, all minus 3. Why can I not draw a 3? All right, so I'm going to plug in that -1 here. So once again, use a calculator, do it by hand, doesn't matter. Of course, as a math teacher, I'm going to say do it by hand, just to improve your numerical literacy as I type it on a calculator. And you get -8. Hello, there you go. Kind of. All right, so you're going to get -8, which this is going to be your K value. All right, so I'm going to write my vertex real quick. So I know my vertex is going to be -1, -8. So -1, -8. All right, so now I am going to write it in vertex form. So I'm going to have y equals a parentheses x minus h all squared plus k. So kind of hello, close enough. So like I was saying earlier with the AOS and rewriting the formula every time you use it, I highly recommend doing it even with vertex form. The more you write it, the more likely you are to actually solidify and remember it. All right, so once again, remember A, H, K. Those are our special values that we're plugging in. So I have a A value of 5, and then we have an H value of -1. So I'm going to subtract that negative, that's squared. And then I'm adding my K value, which is -8. All right, so we have a couple things to clean up here. So right here in the middle, subtracting a negative turns into plus a positive. And then over here, that's just going to be subtracting. All right, so we're going to have y equals 5 parentheses, x plus 1 all squared minus 8. So this right here is your final answer for vertex form. And boom. Alrighty. Moving on. So I would say pause here, try this one on your own, and see how you do. Or if not, hello. So A equals -2, B equals 28, and C equals -92. Yay. All right. So once again, start by finding your AOS. So you're going to have X equals the opposite of B over 2A, which means we are looking at -28 over 2 times -2. So keep in mind the only value we're switching is B. The A value stays the same. So it's only the opposite of B. Okay, this looks terrible, so I'm going to rewrite it. So -28 over 2 times -2. Still kind of terrible, but whatever. All right, so we have -28 over a -4, which is just going to simplify to a +7. So just a reminder, this is your H value. All right, so let's find the vertex. So I'm going to plug in that value that we just found so that I can find the K value. All right, so -2 parentheses 7 squared plus 28 times 7 minus 92. All right, so it's problems like this where I'm like, yeah, calculator. Because even I get lazy when it comes to finding math problems or doing these in my head. I'd like to not have a headache by the end of this video, thank you. So you're gonna get 6 as your K value. All right, so you get equals 6. And that is your K value. All right, so now we need to find the vertex form. My brain just stopped working for a second. All right, so y equals a parentheses x minus h all squared plus k. So as always, I'm gonna sound like a broken record saying this, we're only plugging in for a, h, and k. All right, so remember your h and your k represent your vertex. So 7 and 6 are your vertex. 7, 6. That is your vertex. All right, so let's go back up here, write it in vertex form. So we have an a value of a -2, I believe. Yes, we do. -2 x minus my h value, which is 7, all squared, plus my k value, which is 6. All right. So there's no subtracting a negative, there's no adding a negative, so there's nothing to simplify, which means we are done. So that is your final answer for vertex form. Boom. Okay. All right, if you didn't pause on the last one, I would definitely say pause on this one, try this one on your own, or try this one on your own again. It's up to you. All right, so A value of 3, B value of 12, C value of 17. Yay. All right. So first things first, AOS. That is terrible. All right, so x equals opposite of b all over 2a. So the opposite of b, which is -12 all over 2 times my a value. Now I want to simplify. So negative 12 all over 2 times 3, which is 6, which gives you a value of negative 2. Oh, I just realized I need to be writing it as the AOS. How dare I? I am the worst. How dare I? I did it on the first one. Didn't do it on 2 and 3. We got to fix this. I know it's a small thing, but especially in math, details are what matter. E. All right, so x equals 7. Okay. Anyways, back over here. Now we got to find the vertex. All right, so I'm going to do f of negative 2. All right, so let's go to my original equation up here. So 3 parentheses, negative 2 squared, plus 12 times negative 2, plus 17. So negative 2 and negative 2. So once again, so 3 parentheses, negative 2, all squared, plus 12 times negative 2, plus 17, which will give you a value of 5. All right, and this is your k value. All right, so I'm going to use this information to write the vertex. So we have a vertex of negative 2, 5. All right. So now we need to go ahead and write the vertex form. So y equals a parentheses x minus h all squared plus k. All right. So we're looking for our a, h, and k's. So we have an a value of positive 3. Then x minus your h value, which is negative 2. So we're subtracting negative 2. And then we have a k value of positive 5. So the only thing we got to fix here is subtracting that negative, which is going to turn into a positive. All right, so we're going to have y equals 3 parentheses x plus 2, all squared, plus 5. So that is your vertex form equation. All right, so this is a good kind of glimpse of what to expect. Alrighty, so these last two are the slightly more challenging problems, but they're all pretty straightforward once you have the process down. All right, so now we're looking for our ABCs. So we have an A value of 3, we have a B value of 0, and a C value of 5. As always, ye. Alrighty. AOS. So x equals opposite of B all over 2a. All right, so your B value is 0, so I'm going to do the opposite of 0 all over 2a, so 2 times 3. Now in this case, remember when you take the opposite of 0, it's just 0 all over 6, which is 6, which means our AOS here is x equals 0, which is your h value. So now we need to find the vertex. So I'm going to plug this in. All right, so I want to do f of that value that I just found. So I'm plugging in 0. All right, so I'm doing 3 parentheses 0 squared plus 5. So you're going to get 0. So I'm going to do this one by hand. Hopefully this one's not too bad. So 0 squared is just going to give you 0 plus 5. And anything times 0 just gives you 0. So 0 plus 5, which gives you 5. And this one is your k value. All right, so your vertex here, h comma k, 0 comma 5. So a vertex here, 0 comma 5. So now we just want to write it in vertex form. Alrighty, so let's start with y equals a parentheses x minus h all squared plus k. As always, plug in your a, h, and k. Hello, there we go. All right, so here you have a value of 3, h value of 0, and we're going to have, hello, pop up, and we're going to have a k value of 5. Now, when you subtract 0, it doesn't change the value, so I'm just going to rewrite it as 3 parentheses x squared plus 5. Now, you should probably start noticing something. If I have a single value in the parentheses, I don't need those parentheses, so I can just drop the parentheses. So I just have 3x squared plus 5. Well, look at your initial problem, and now look at your vertex form. It's the exact same. I know, hold your applause. Okay, so the point being here is if the b term is missing, it's already in vertex form. So congratulations, you did math to get the same thing. All right, so your vertex form equation here is just the initial question. I forgot to highlight, how dare I? Anyways. All right. So now for this one, so this is where the problems can get more tricky. It's because of the numbers itself. So now you can see we're going to have a fraction. So this is where the fun really begins. So we have an a value of -2/3, a b value of -8, and a c value of -20. Yeet. All right. So as you can see, I did not hold back on this problem. All right. So process is still the exact same. It just makes the actual process challenging, more challenging. So we're still going to start with the AOS. All right, so the opposite of B over 2A. All right, so this might be one of those problems you might want to just watch and listen and then write it down at the very end. So I would say just watch and listen at this part. All right, so we have the opposite of -8, and then we want 2 times our A value, which is -2/3. So we have a fraction and a fraction. I know you're all so excited for this part. All right, so in the numerator, it's going to simplify to a +8, and in the denominator, we have -4/3. So when you have a fraction and a fraction like this, you kind of want to invert it, and you're going to multiply by the reciprocal. So I'm going to multiply by a -3/4. So then I'm going to multiply the whole number times the numerator. So we're going to have a -24 all over 4, which simplifies to -6. All right, so now your AOS here is x equals -6. And this right here is your h value. All right, so now we got to plug it in and find our k value. So for the vertex, so f of -6. Yes. And we're going to plug it into our original equation up there. So the -2/3 x squared minus 8x minus 20. So the -2/3 x squared minus 8x minus 20. All right, so I'm going to plug in that negative 6. So negative 2/3 parentheses negative 6 squared minus 8 negative 6 minus 20. And you're going to get a value of 4. All right, so one thing to note, to get a fraction, you're going to press this button right here. It'll automatically open up a fraction. So that's how you can type that negative 2/3 right at the very beginning. Then the rest of it's pretty much the same. All right, so that equals a positive 4. All right, now I need to write it in vertex form. So this is your k value. Also, if you're on a TI, what you can do is you can press alpha y equals and then press 1. So if I press alpha y equals and then I press 1 down here, just make sure I press the right button, it'll open up that fraction bar. Now that's if you have math print. If you're on classic mode, it's just going to display as a division. So it would look just like 2 divided by 3. So you could write it as 2/3 if you want to as well. It doesn't make a difference. Just make sure that you also write it in parentheses if you are going to leave it in classic mode. So that goes for both Casios and for TIs. All right, that was my foot. All right, so now I'm going to write it in vertex form. So y equals a parentheses x minus h all squared plus k. So once again, broken record here, a, h, and k. All right, so your a value is a negative 2/3. Then x minus your h value, which is a negative 6. So minus that negative 6, all squared. And then we're going to add our k value, which is 4. All right, so now that we got all the parts together, now we can just start simplifying. All right, so we are going to have a negative 2/3 parentheses x plus 6 all squared plus 4. So this is going to be your vertex form equation right here. All right, so the fractions from the very beginning just kind of make the process a little bit more rigorous and a little bit more challenging, but it's still doable. Plus, if you have a calculator, it will literally do it for you. All right, and you got to fill in the vertex, which is negative 6, 4. Okay, thanks, bye.